Good evening, all.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening.
Dr. Rakesh, you can start now. It's live stream now.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Welcome all. Very good evening to all. As you all are aware of, Indian Society of Anesthesiologists is always in the forefront for helping its members in various fronts, including academic and other supportive activities. In the same line, the Indian Society of Anesthesiologists has its official publication as Indian Journal of Anesthesia, which is a well-renowned international PubMed Index journal and is in the lead role across the world for various amounts of publication in various domains. As per the request and demand from various members, we are starting the series of webinars which are related to research and publication. And ISA National is always very supportive for this webinar, which has been named as ISA-IJA Research and Publications. So I will request Dr. Venkatagiri KM, who is past secretary and past president ISA National, who is chairman ISA Academic Committee, to welcome for today's inaugural webinar. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rakesh. Good evening, President and all ISA dignitaries, friends and faculty. As Rakesh said, during my period, I was telling that there needs a training for people to how to write a scientific article, how to do a research and all. In that, it's a good initiative from ISA-IJA that we are training our future incoming or budding authors and writers. And without wasting much time, in one word, I welcome you all, starting from our president to the last member of the society and all the faculties, Dr. Divetya and Dr. Said Mohit for this program. And thank you very much. Welcome you all.
Thank you so much, sir. Regarding the REAP, the research and publication, it's the outcome of various academic discussion by the ISA. We'll be having this session on alternate Thursday from 5 to 6. And pioneers who has good experience in research and publication, and they are on the various platform of editorial board, will be taking us through for learning the nitty-gritties of various aspects of research and publications. I'm sure that all the ISA members, if they have any feedback, they feel free for any critique and criticism so that we can improve upon the academic component of the REAP itself. Any feedback you can communicate to us, and we ensure that we'll keep the highest level of academics. Now I will request the President ISA National, Dr. Ambi Bhimeshwar, to give a welcome note and hoist the ISA flag for the inauguration of ISA REAP program.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rakesh. Wonderful initiative by you to start the ISA-IJA REAP, research and publication. Now, dignitaries, Honorary Secretary Dr. Sukhminder Bajwa, Dr. President-elect Dr. Divetya, Vice President Dr. Mahesh Sinha, Venkatagiri, the past President, Naveen, the past Honorary Secretary, and Dr. Rakesh Garg, Syed Mohit. Welcome to all for this inaugural session of the IJA REAP, which is being done by the Editor-in-Chief. And I'm very happy that we are starting all these academic events wonderfully being conducted. And every Monday, the Honorary Secretary is doing the scientific program. And I'm sure even this being conducted by the Editor-in-Chief will also go a long way in enriching the knowledge of all the people. And without wasting much time, I would like to formally inaugurate this session by hoisting the national flag, ISA flag. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Rakesh.
We'll move towards some words of wisdom from our ISA Vice President, Dr. Mahesh Sinha, please. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. President ISA and all the government council members and all the participants in this program. My voice may be slightly low because I am in a remote area where the signals are very low. So actually, all the best wishes to the editor team and all the participants in the program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I will request President-elect ISA National, Dr. J.V. Divetia, to give the words of wisdom for these webinars and how to go forward. Over to you, sir.
So, Mr. President, sir, Dr. Bhimeshwar, Dr. Venkatgiri, Chairman, Academic Committee, Dr. Bajwa, Honorary Secretary, and Rakesh, Editor-in-Chief of IJA. So I think there's a wonderful initiative, and in addition to the workshop, the research methodology workshops and so on that we are doing to spread awareness about research and publication and to train a whole generation of young and old ISA members in this activity. I think it's a commendable step. I wish you all the best. And, this is a great initiative, and congratulations for thinking of it. And I'm sure it'll be very useful to everyone in future.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. I will request Honorary Secretary ISA National, Dr. Sukhminderjit Singh Bajwa, for his words and how can we go forward for making it more success and beneficial to our ISA members. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rakesh. I think we already have taken the first step, and together we will be achieving more. And the ultimate vision is to have academic ISA at the international level, not at the national level. We will be striving hard that for the next 3 years, we should be visible internationally in all the academics and all the academic achievements as a team, as a together, not team just of GC team, rather of the ISA members, they're coming collectively. And these type of events, academic events, they will be contributing, at least in motivating the people to come forward on the academic platforms. Definitely now this ISA and IJA webinar will be a fortnightly event from here onwards. And it will be mixed with the panel discussions. The idea is to involve each and every member of ISA, maybe a practitioner, maybe an institution person, maybe a person from a corporate sector, so that a holistic development of the ISA members and ISA society as a whole, it should come up. So whatever the academics event, we are more in having a more planning also about the more programs, but that will depend upon our, the speed, how we move forward from here. And it's really thankful that our president, sir, and vice president, the president-elect, the academic chairman, my treasurer partner, Dr. Manoj, everybody is there to at least help the editor and the secretary in these type of academic programs. So I wish best of luck to our DC team and to the editorial team to go forward from here and keep doing the good work. Best of all, to all the editor team as well as our ISA GC team, and long live ISA. Dr. Rakesh, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, sir. So we'll move forward for our today's session. So I'll hand over the session to Professor Syed Mohid Ahmed, who is professor and past chairman at JNMC Aligarh Muslim University. He's a well-renowned academician and researcher. So I will request sir to take the session forward and introduce the speaker. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for Dr. Rakesh for that introduction, and it's a pleasure and honor to be to moderate such an excellent session. First of all, I would like to congratulate Dr. Rakesh and his full team for such an initiative and thought process. And this was something which was really we were looking forward to, especially the young budding authors who really need this, because this is for the first step, in fact, how to go ahead with your research process. I would like to introduce our speaker. Of course, he needs no introduction, but he is he has been the past president of Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine. He has been past editor-in-chief of Indian Journal of Anesthesia. He has been again the past president of All India Difficult Airway Association. He is the head of the department of Tata Memorial Hospital. He is the president-elect of the ISA. So over to you, sir. He'll be speaking on a very interesting topic. I would welcome all the people, delegates, to go ahead with. And please, whatever queries you have in between, please jot it down on the chat box so that we can in future, we can, after the session, we can answer those queries. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
So good evening, and thank you so much for having me speak at this very interesting concept that is now happening, the ISA-IJA series on research and publication. And this is an excellent initiative thought out by our editor-in-chief, Dr. Rakesh Garg, and the academic council of the ISA. Yeah. So I think Dr. Garg asked me to speak on how to submit the perfect manuscript. I don't know if any such manuscript exists that is perfect. I will just talk roughly on how you can submit your article to the journal for publication so that it has the best chance of getting accepted for publication. In some ways, this is a ironic start to the beginning of a series, because if you go to see, the publication of the manuscript is actually a step in your research process. So your research process starts with identifying a research question and then doing the study in the most appropriate and the best sort of way, and collecting the data, analyzing your finding, interpreting them, and finally getting a manuscript publication. So this is so publishing your paper or writing your paper is actually a sort of conglomeration and a summation of all that you've been doing in your study. And so I think all these initial steps will be dealt with in all the subsequent sessions that will be held. But I think this is a good point to start, where you just put forward a summary of what you sort of need to look at. So, and I know I'm speaking to people here who've been on editorial board, been editors, and who've been with IJA and with many other journals. So I'm sure they have their own comments to make and their own suggestions to give. But this is just a very short summary of what I have been through. And I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been subject to many of these whatever you call ignominies I've faced as an author. We're getting comments from reviewers and editors. And I've been an editor, and hopefully I've been able to communicate some of the problems with papers and so on. So it's a sort of a mix of the experience I've had over these years, both as an author, a potential author, and as a editor. So I think the most, one of the important things that needs to happen is you should have a good topic. You should have a good research question, which is a clinically important topic, and hopefully it should be a new idea. And if you want to really get into a good journal, it has to be something novel. None of the major journals will take something if it's a repetition of something that has been done before. If you're doing a study, a larger study with collaboration with multi-institutional and multi-author sort of thing, has a better chance of getting published in a good journal. Having said that, we all do thesis, we all do projects within our hospitals. So they are also very valuable pieces of research studies. And I'm sure they will also can get published in good journals. Now, before you actually publish a journal, there's a very good chance that you would have presented this somewhere, either in your department or in your hospital or at some conference. So even before you write your manuscript, you take these suggestions that you get, those comments and even criticism that you get when you present these papers at various meetings, so you incorporate that into your final manuscript before you actually send it for publication. Now, this whole research and publication business, it's actually a bit of a bureaucracy. And you have to make sure that your study and your whatever you're doing has subscribed to the regulatory norms at the time. And one of the first things that is actually you have to do even before you enroll your first patient is to make sure your study, especially if it's an interventional trial, is registered with some WHO registry. And the one which is commonly used for abroad is clinicaltrials.gov. But in India, we have the CTRI, the Clinical Trial Registry of India, which is the ICMR run portal where you should register your study before you even enroll your first patient. And no good journal, I think even Indian journal will now has will not be taking articles. Dr. Rakesh may update me on that. Will not accept articles if your study has not been registered with the Clinical Trial Registry of India or CTRI. It is absolutely vital that your study be done properly and designed properly and executed properly for it to have a chance, right, to get published. And one of the mistakes that many people make is, you do the study, you do something, and then you give your data, your Excel file or a SPSS file to a statistician, so you analyze it. But a statistician should be involved right at the time you plan your study, so that, he will tell you what sample size to choose, how to choose your sample size, get an adequate number of patients. He will help you in your study design and all those kind of things. So please make sure you have done all these things even before you start your study. You start writing, and even when you design your study, just to go through the standard reporting guidelines. And this is the sort of website, the Equipment Network. And depending on what kind of study design you have, there is a standard format or a template by which you can both design your trial and report your trial. So for randomized trial, for example, you have the consort guidelines for reporting it. If you're doing observational study, then you have the strobe guidelines. If you're doing a meta-analysis or a systematic review, you have the PRISMA guidelines. So you follow these sort of templates when you're writing, and actually even when you're designing a study, to make sure that you're gone through all the steps of during doing the study as well as when you're writing your paper. Now, it is important that you choose your journal well. Now, if it's a simple anesthesia topic, it's probably very straightforward that you send it to an anesthesia journal, like maybe the Indian Journal of Anesthesia. But sometimes you're having a paper which can have something to do with medicine, it can have something to do with intensive care, it could have something to do with pain, it can have something to do with neurology or cardiology or cardiac surgery. So it might be nice to sort of see which journal is most likely to take your paper, right? And you can talk to some of your colleagues who are there in different disciplines and choose the journal that where you have the best chance of getting published. A big journal, a high impact journal will want to publish something very new. So unless your thing is very new, I don't think journals like Lancet or NEJM or anesthesiology will take it. But if you've done something which is novel, new, which has not been done before, and you've got some good study design, then you should try and submit to one of these better journals. Okay. Like I said, make sure all your regulatory things are intact. You've got your ethics committee approval, and it's not just an ethics approval. If you want to send to a big journal, they will also want your protocol. And if there have been protocol amendments, they'll want the protocol amendments and the ethics approval of the protocol amendments, results of any data monitoring if it's been done. Okay. And of course, like I mentioned, they must be registered with the trial registry like the CTRI. So make sure you've got all your protocols and your ethics approvals for any amendments and so on in place, and reports of data monitoring. If that's been part of your trial design, you need to make sure all that is available, and journals will ask you for it. Even if they don't publish it, the editors will want to see all these things, and big journals like NEJM and Lancet will actually publish your protocol separately as a supplement. Now, when you write your manuscript, okay, you have to think not just for yourself. See, you're the expert. You've done the study. You know everything about your study. You know your study inside out. But the readers don't know it. The reviewers don't know it. The editors don't know it as well. So you have to make it readable and understandable to the rest of the audience. Okay, and therefore, you must think now from the reader's point of view and write it accordingly. The readers want to know what you did, why you did it, what you found, and what is your interpretation of what you think it means, right? Use simple language. Now, I know most of us are not English-speaking people. Even some of us who think we speak good English, when we actually write, our English is not grammatically very good, okay? No journal will reject your article just because the English is not good. They may suggest that you should improve your English or consult an English language expert to go through your article, but they will not reject it because your language was not good enough. They will reject it because the science was not good enough, right? So try and see if you can get it, but still, if it's written well, it's an advantage, okay? Secondly, no, you're writing a scientific paper. You're not writing a novel. You're not writing a short story. So your writing must be precise and scientific. It don't be very, glamorous, and don't try and be very bombastic in your language. Be very brief, precise, be clear. Okay. And that's scientific writing. And most importantly, follow the journal instructions. Depending on which journal you want to send, there will be instructions to authors. So make sure you go through them very carefully. What are the headings under which you should structure your paper? Or how are the references to be written? Okay, how is the reference to be numbered? All those things, please go through them very carefully, because different journals may have different sort of instructions on how to do these things. See how they want to submit the figures or the drawings, what sort of resolution is required, what sort of file format will they take. So make sure you do all these things before you prepare your article for the journal, right? So different journals have different requirements. So once you've chosen your journal, go through the instructions to authors very carefully and stick to it very rigorously, because otherwise you will spend a lot of time just going back and forth and making what we call as technical corrections, So it has not been reviewed for scientific validity. It's just not meeting the requirement of the journal. So they'll send it back to you. If they say the abstract has to be 300 words, but you send a 500-word abstract, they'll come back saying, please send it back with the 300-word abstract. So that's the sort of thing will happen. Number of figures, word limit, number of figures, all those things are given in instructions to authors. So please stick to it very rigorously. Your title is, now it's something like Love at First Sight. So the title must catch the attention of the reader. But again, this is a scientific paper, so it should describe the content of your manuscript and make some person want to read further. So, like when you say, I have done this research, I have done this study, and this is the title of my paper. I will ask you, so what? So you have to be able to answer two questions. So what and who cares? I have done a study of intrathecal fentanyl versus intrathecal dexmedetomidine in 1 ml of bupivacaine versus 1.5 ml of bupivacaine. So my question will be, so what? And they say, no, but then it makes such a big difference whether you dilute in 1 ml of bupivacaine or 1.5 ml. Who cares? I mean, is it going to affect anyone? Is it going to change anything? So these are two big questions that you need to answer. So when you design your study and when you write your title, you should make sure that people will want to read further, because it sort of raises their interest and sort of answers these two questions. Okay. So for example, this is a nice title, right? So it describes the contents of the study, the keywords, and the results. Also sort of gives you a hint as to what is the result. So IV infusion of low-dose vasopressin reduces the incidence of hypotension following spinal anesthesia. So this is a very nice, clear title. It tells you that you studied vasopressin, a low dose of vasopressin for spinal anesthesia to reduce hypotension. What it does not tell you is what is a type of study. For example, a randomized controlled trial, or in what type of patients. Is it in patients undergoing cesarean section, or is it in patients undergoing GI surgery, or whatever it may be. But that apart, at least it gives you some information as to what you've studied and what you found. So that's a reasonably good title. This is not a very good title. It's like fentanyl, adjuvant post-op analgesia. It doesn't tell you anything, whether it's a good adjuvant, bad adjuvant, whether it's intravenous, whether it's for what type of surgery. It doesn't tell you anything. So sometimes titles can be very catchy, but they don't convey much meaning. So they are good as a newspaper headline, but maybe not as an article title for a scientific way. For example, say no to NO2. Say no to NO2. That's a very nice, catchy title, right? Say no to nitrous oxide. Say no to NO2. Sounds very good, very catchy, but it doesn't tell you whether it's writing an editorial, or whether it's a study, or whether what you've done and why you're saying no, or so those are the things you should try and avoid. Okay, so maybe a better title for this one would be intrathecal fentanyl as an adjuvant to hyperbaric bupivacaine prolongs postoperative analgesia in patients undergoing cesarean section. Again, it's a good title. Maybe sometimes you might put / a randomized control study, or colon a observational study, or something like that. So just a study design, or if that is added, it will almost become a complete title. Almost all journals want a short running title, right? So that and usually it's limited to 50 characters or something like that. So you can say that, intrathecal fentanyl as an adjuvant to spinal anesthesia for cesarean section or something like that. So we need to do that sort of thing. The abstract is something, again, which many people don't pay attention to, but it is extremely important because, put yourself in the position of a reader. How many times do you read a full paper? Most of the time, you look at the title. If you're not into the title, you chuck it out, you turn the page. If you like the title, you might read the abstract, right? Not many people will actually go through the whole paper, but the abstract is something that almost everyone reads, right? And that is something that must also be able to stand alone. The abstract must get, obviously not the full sense, but a good sense of what has happened in this paper. Findings and what is the importance or take-home message of these findings. So that must be there in your abstract. And most abstracts in most journals will be what they should have a structured abstract. So in the abstract, there'll be background and aims, methods, results, discussion or methods, and conclusions. So these are you will have to structure an abstract within these sort of things as for a study, right? So a structured abstract the reader will be able to make out what has happened in these sort of things. Okay? So abstract must be written very nicely and very carefully. And I'll tell you when to write the abstract, but a little later on. But the other thing is that most abstracts have word limits, and that's because the way the journal, the print issue or the web issue of the journal is sort of structured. It must come in that first page and it should not spill over, and then some text should come below it. So usually there's a limit to your abstracts. Please make sure you stick to that abstract word limit. Don't say, it doesn't matter, I'll write the limit is 300. No, I'll write 400 words, doesn't matter. Editor kuch na kuch kar dega, and then he'll publish it. In some journals, there is a box. Like when you submit online, there's a box, and if your number of words or characters exceeds, you will not be able to type further, right? Indian journal doesn't have that still, but you must try and restrict your abstract to the limit which has been set. The introduction is also a very introduction. It should be precise, but it must tell you why you carried out this research, right? What is the rationale? What is the biological rationale? It must tell you what is the existing state of knowledge on the topic, right? And we must give a few key papers which summarize the current knowledge or the current lack of knowledge. What is known, what is unknown, and what knowledge gap is your study sort of trying to fill in. So I think that is the important thing that everyone will want to see as to why you're doing this study. If you say, oh, there have been 1,000 articles on this, and 990 were done in North, 500 were done in South India, 400 were in North India, 20 were done in West India, and therefore I'm doing this in East India, may not necessarily be the best reason why you want to do this study. But so there must be some. So when you write that introduction, you must have some rationale for doing this study, which must come in over here. Okay. And then you must say what you're going to do. And because there was this problem, we did not know whether intrathecal fentanyl prolonged this thing in the duration of post-op analgesia after cesarean section, we decided to do this study and so on. Okay. And your hypothesis must be stated very, very clearly in your introduction. Okay. Now, the make and break of your study is how you have written your methods. Okay, so the methods are absolutely critical. If by reading your paper, the author, any other reader should be able to replicate your study. And the methods must very clearly state what kind of patients you've taken, inclusion, exclusion criteria, the primary and secondary endpoints, how you've done your study, how the trial has been executed, how did you randomize patients, how was allocation concealment done, whether it was the randomization was by a random number table or whether it was by a web-based randomization or a phone-based randomization, how was allocation concealed, whether there were envelopes, opaque envelopes, or whether there was a web-based allocation, how was the blinding done, who was blinded, patient, person conducting the case, persons who who are assessing the patient subsequently, the statisticians, who was blinded, all those sort of things. What were the treatments given? How were the treatments given? For example, if you are doing something of a ultrasound guided block, you must say what probe was used, how the block was given. Okay, or if the block is a very standard block, you can say the block was given using ultrasound with this machine, sonocyte, etc., as described by so and so, and give the reference. But you must have the method on which the thing was given, both in the treatment group and in the control group. It is very important in many of our papers as to what were the safety sort of considerations. So, for example, what was the rescue analgesic in case the patient did not continued to have pain after your intervention? What was this thing for doing an airway study? What was the fallback plan if intubation failed using this sort of particular video laryngoscope, right? So you must have those things must be very clearly written. Otherwise, it counts adversely, is that you did not think about the patient, you only think of a study. Okay. How were your, if you're doing some assays, then you need to write something about the assay. If you're using some score or scale, then you have to say what that score was. So you're having some delirium score, you must give that score. If you're having a score for grading sore throat after insertion of a supraaortic airway device, what is that score? How did you grade the severity of sore throat or post-op nausea? All that should be very clearly stated in your methods. Sample size calculations and statistical analysis should also be mentioned, and a statistician will help you do these sort of things. So the methods are absolutely crucial. If there's a problem in any of these issues, you cannot revert it. You cannot say, if the reviewers find fault with the way you included patient, the way you randomized, you cannot correct it because you've already done it, right? You can only explain, but you cannot correct. So make sure you've done the study well and you've reported all the finer points correctly. And most of us fail in the methods. We fail in novelty and we fail in methods, right? That's where Indian studies often take a hit. Okay, results, again, should be written nicely. Follow the reporting guidelines like I mentioned. So if it's a randomized study, follow a consort diagram. Otherwise, you have a flow chart to see how the patients sort of went about in the study. Organize the data very nicely. See what data you want to put as text, what data you want to put in tables, and what data you want to put in figures. Keep in mind that many journals will have a limit on the number of tables and figures that you can put in. So you put in your main things, the important things, in the main manuscript, and some will allow you to put the rest of the data in a supplement. So which should go in the supplement, which data should come in the main manuscript. You should have that discuss it with your colleague, with the authors, and that sort of thing. Very importantly, don't repeat data from the tables and figures and text. So in the text, don't say the mean age was so much and there were so many male and so many females, and then put up a table showing age and sex distribution of people. Put one of the two. Okay. So and now in thesis we do it regularly. We write it in the text, we make a table out of it, and we make a graph out of it, because we just want to expand the size of our thesis. But for a paper, we want either you put it in the text or in the figure or in the table. So make sure that it's there's no repetition, that sort of thing. If you're having things like mean plus standard deviation, which you want to show in a figure, make sure that the variability, right, it is shown as error bars, whether it's the error bars display standard deviation or confidence interval or whatever, but make sure that variability is also shown in your this thing. Also, if you said you're monitoring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parameters in the methods, those results must be there in your results. Secondly, if you've not mentioned something in your results, don't put that in your methods, don't put it in your results. For example, you say you're going to monitor SOFA score, Apache score, CRP, ferritin level in your methods. Those things must be there. Don't additionally put IL-6 levels and, because you've not mentioned that in your methods, right? So don't report something which is not there in your methods in the results, and make sure you report everything that is there in your methods also in your results. Discussion is the first paragraph of the discussion is the key findings. Your key findings must come in your, it must start off your discussion. That is the absolute key findings. The next few paragraphs can go on, to explain why you found what you found. Did it meet the hypothesis that you had made? how do your findings compare with other similar sort of papers done on that topic? And it's not enough to say our findings contradict, my findings contradict Rakesh Garg's, but my findings are in agreement with Dr. Bajwa's findings, and my findings are partly in agreement with Dr. So-and-so, so-and-so. You need to say that. Why do you think there were differences? Whether the difference in the type of patients or the way the procedure was done, or the other interventions, there are some differences, like, so you need to give some explanation also about that. Otherwise, our findings agree with X, disagree with Y, half of them agree with Z, and other half disagrees with ABC. I mean, that's not the way you need to do. You need to say why you may have had differences with what has been earlier reported in the literature. Okay. Of course, explain the relevance and implications of your findings, and what are the strengths and limitations of your study, and how and what future directions will your results give. So at this point, you can say that, if we need more research, and maybe we should have investigated this aspect also, or some other aspect also. These things can be discussed in the discussion. But in your conclusion, you must only make conclusions which are supported by your data. And that also must be focused on your primary endpoint. If there is some significant finding from your secondary endpoints, you can do it. But otherwise, your conclusion must purely be based on the primary endpoint. Let's say, for example, you're doing a study of nitrous oxide for whether it is post-op nausea and vomiting. So you've done a randomized controlled trial, and you found that use of nitrous oxide increased the incidence of post-op nausea and vomiting. So your conclusion would be use of nitrous oxide increases post-operative nausea and vomiting in female patients or in patients undergoing laparoscopic surgery. So that's your conclusion. Afterwards, in your conclusion, please do not put, therefore, nitrous oxide should not be used anymore, and it only increases the cost, and it increases hospital stay and anxiety and stress to the patients. Because you may be right, you can put it in your discussion, but you have not studied cost of nitrous oxide, you've not measured anxiety, you've not monitored stress, and you've not measured hospital length of stay in your study, right? So that cannot be as part of your conclusion. It can be part of your discussion. So your conclusion must be entirely and only supported by based on your data, and that too focus largely on your primary endpoint. So for example, there's a study which has recently been published, the POISE-3 study looking at tranexamic acid in patients undergoing non-cardiac surgery. And they concluded that among patients undergoing non-cardiac surgery, the incidence of composite bleeding outcome was significantly lower with tranexamic than with placebo. And this was a primary endpoint. The secondary endpoint was cardiovascular complications. So that's why they have mentioned, because it was significant. Although the between group difference in the composite cardiovascular outcome was small, the non-inferiority of tranexamic acid was not established. In other words, there were more cardiovascular complications with tranexamic acid. That's a significant secondary endpoint, but that's the only conclusion it would draw. They don't say it was cheap, it easily available, simple, all those things, because we've not measured any of those. Right? So to summarize, start early. So when you're doing your study, you can write the methods, because that's already decided, isn't it? So write your methods. Once you get your data, right, organize it nicely into tables, text, and figures. Okay. Then look at your results. Then you start discussing your paper, right? After that, you write your abstract, because once your whole paper is written, you can then make your short abstract as to the highlights of your background and aims, your methods, your results, and your conclusion. Okay. Now, like I say, everyone falls in love with their work, and you always think you've done a fantastic job. And today you write it, tomorrow you look at it, you may want to change it. So keep changing it, like till you're happy. Give it to one of your colleagues or friends to read, and within yourselves, you revise the paper, right? Make sure your journal guidelines are good, okay, and write clearly, logically, and simply. And most importantly, do not forget to do a plagiarism check. Even people with the best intentions, they inadvertently copy a few sentences or reproduce a few sentences, and it can create a problem for you later on. So please do a plagiarism check and make sure your plagiarism level is extremely low. Okay. Now you're ready to submit the paper. Write a letter to the editor-in-chief of the journal. Okay. Write his name. Dear Dr. Rakesh Garg, Department of Anesthesiology, so-and-so, Hospital, Editor-in-Chief, Indian Journal of Anesthesia. in the journal, you say why you're submitting to this journal. Say what is nice about your study. Don't just write the abstract of the study. Highlight the novel aspect of your work and why readers of the Indian Journal of Anesthesia would find this article useful. Okay. Nice. It makes a good impression on the editor. You have to start doing that also. What does the editor expect? Just all the things that I told you. The title should be descriptive and specific, abstract should be right length, introduction should be strong, clearly state what is it, why you're doing this research. Research question is clearly stated. The literature is comprehensive, relevant, and fairly new. The methods are descriptive enough to be replicated. Figures and tables, citations, and so on, right? And the manuscript follows the journal guidelines. So this is what the editors first look at in a technical review. Now, once you send your article to the journal, the editor or associate editor will look at it. Sometimes they send it back within 24 hours. I've spent a lot of time on a lot of occasions. You send the article at night, the next morning, there's an email in your box. We are sorry, we are not able to accept journal. So it's not even gone through review. The editor or associate editor has looked at it and sent an article back. Sorry, we are not going to take this journal. If it goes for review, you've got a chance, right? You've got a fighting chance over there. Then you'll go to reviewers. The reviewers will give their comments. The editor will put all these together and they'll give you a decision. Either they will accept, straight acceptance, very unusual, or they will reject, which is very common, or hopefully they will ask you to revise your article. Okay. Why are articles rejected instantly? It lacks novelty. It doesn't fit the ambit of the journal. So they'll say, yeah, it's a good article, but it does not within the scope of our journal. It poses an uninteresting question that leads nowhere, or the study design is poor or inappropriate. So they'll just send it back to you without a review. It will go for a review if the editor thinks there is something in it, and then the reviewers will go to it. We'll go to 2 or more reviewers. And what the reviewers will do is they will see if the paper is scientifically and ethically sound, and they're experts in their field. So, you can't fool them that it's factual, clear, complete, original. It's not something. And the job of the reviewer, and also to a certain extent of the editor, is to find out what is wrong with your paper, or what can be improved in your paper. Let me put it that way. Okay. Now, when you get a decision from the reviewer to review, to revise, or even a rejection, they will always give reasons. And then, that's the time you really start feeling bad. You've done so much hard work, both in designing the study, carrying out the study, writing the paper. You have broken your head so many times over. And, but you still need to acknowledge some facts of life. Yours is not going to be a Nobel Prize winning study. That's a fact. No study is perfect, least of all yours. And the reviewers and editors will find almost all the faults in your study, and they will actually find a few more, right? So that's what reviewers often do. Please remember that reviewers are often smarter and more knowledgeable than you. They are subject experts. And if something is not clear to a reviewer, it is because maybe the way you have written it has not made it clear. So don't say, "Arey, reviewer gada hai, maine itna likha, magar usko kuch pata nahi, kuch aada hi, some lateral question puchta hai usne. He has not understood my paper at all." And many of us have that feeling when you get a response from a reviewer. But think again, because odds are maybe you need to write it differently or clarify it in a little way. And 80-90%, I would say even 99% of times, you will have to revise your paper. You will have to revise your paper, and it may not be only one review. You have to review it multiple times, revise it multiple times. So what sort of revisions you get? One is you get major revisions, right? Where, there are questions on the methods. May not be a rejection, but may be a chance to revise, but there are questions on the methods. Why did you do this? Did you not do something like this? Or something like that. They may ask you to reanalyze your data, look at it in a different way, additional experiments, right? So these are major. And unless you answer these questions satisfactorily, your article will not make it. Sometimes there are minor things like your language, your additional references, put two articles from this journal which were published the last 1 year. Well, the figures are not labeled correctly. Minor things which that not very important, something you can fix very easily. But these questions are the ones you must be able to satisfy the reviewers and the editors. If you don't do it, you will not get the article in. Okay. Now, different journals have different ways of accepting. One is right now decline, but future acceptance possible. That means they'll give you a opportunity to revise. This is a little better. That right now decline, but they've liked your paper. There are just a few questions that they really wanted to answer. If you answer that, they will probably accept it. And one is, of course, reject, do not resubmit. Go to some other journal. Why are they reviewed? The most common is there's a problem in your methods or in your design. That is the most common. The next most common is lack of novelty. I think these two make up for 90% of rejections. Okay, whether it's an Indian journal or an international journal. And international journals, this would probably be number one. This might be number two. Lack of a clear message, the rationale why you did the study is poorly explained, and this is a problem. Make sure you go through all your numbers. You say, I randomized 100 and so many patients, there were so many in this group and so many in that group. But when you give the mortality, you give the mortality numbers, the numbers are less than what is there in the total. That sort of discrepancy is very bad. So make sure you do all these things. And if your numbers don't add up and then you say, oh, sorry, it was actually like this and like that, then they will think you're making it up. So make sure all these things, there's no discrepancy that is there. Once you get either a rejection letter or a major revision letter, your first feeling is one of anger. I did such a good job and look what they've written. They've written this and that and ada teda comments mara hai, isko kuch samjha nahi hai, wo gada hai, So the best thing is read that letter, take a deep breath, put it down and go to sleep and read them the next day with a cool mind, right? And with an open mind. So see what they've said, right? But don't respond immediately. Don't respond in anger. Think about it, put it down. Remember, many of the reviewers are knowledgeable people. They are quite good at their work, and so read it with an open mind. And then you start revising the paper. Go through each and every comment that is made, okay, and answer all those questions. Remember, you cannot change your methods. You can only clarify, right? You cannot change your inclusion and exclusion criteria. You cannot change your methods. You cannot change your sample size, right? But you can explain why you use this method, why you did this, why you use this score and not some other score. Why you use this block and not that block, why you use this as a control and not something else as a control. So you cannot change any of these things, but you need to be able to clarify and that sort of thing. So this is a paper which we wrote and which got published in Critical Care Medicine. It was a test called a tidal volume challenge. Okay. So this is what the editor wrote. So the issues of more challenges and patients. So some patients, we had 20 patients, but 25 challenges, right? Or 28 challenges. That means some patients got the intervention more than once. So he said that the wonder whether the report would be loaded with extra assessments in the more responsive patients. So, the authors need to put that concern to rest. Okay. So this is how we answer. To address the important concern that the report will be loaded, we have performed an analysis taking only the first set of measurements. So only one measurement per patient, we sort of looked at that data. Okay, and we gave it back to the editor that this is what it is, and the results were quite similar, right? So you have to reanalyze your data, look at it again, so that you answer the concern. It's a valid concern that the editor had. So we answered that. So they were very happy with that sort of thing. Okay. Sometimes you need not make a change. Most often you should make the changes, or you should attempt to answer the question. You may not make all changes if you strongly believe that it will take away from the paper. Okay, but you have to respectfully disagree. You can disagree, but respectfully disagree. Don't say that the reviewer is wrong and he has not understood. Don't say, we do not believe that the editor has an adequate understanding of the topic, or he has not understood my topic, or he has misinterpreted my statement. Please don't make such statements. Say that, perhaps you would like to clarify in the following way. And say that whole thing, because ultimately it's going to go back to the reviewer, and he also does not going to take doesn't like to hear bad things from the authors, right? So just keep it civil and keep it courteous and keep it scientific, right? Okay. Then you have to write a response to the reviewer. You have to give your response and make sure that is done very well, right? So write a cover letter, okay? And then you take each point that has been raised by each reviewer point by point and give your comment. If you've made a change, you say what change you have made and where you've made it, and highlight that part in your manuscript that you sent. For example, in the IJA and many other journals, they make a table like this. Original comments of the editor or reviewer, reply, and here you'll put where you made that change. The change is done on page, line, and number. So, and see how this means, right? This patient, does it mean the child received sevoflurane and 100% oxygen? So we write, this is an excellent point. Now, again, the reviewer, when it comes back to him, he say, this person is complimenting me for, trying to improve the paper. Thank you for noticing the oversight has been clarified, delivered in a mixture of oxygen and air. Now, see, so that was a mistake from my side, isn't it? Or the author's side, that they wrote sevoflurane and oxygen. It's actually oxygen and air. So that has to be quite specific, how much air and how much oxygen, right? Right. So again, as the editor rightfully pointed out, so again, you have to keep massaging the ego of the editor and the reviewer. So if you can do that nicely and make the changes, it's good. So thank you for your input, and always end your submission or revision with saying that, we thank the editors and the reviewers for their time and for making recommendations to improve the manuscript. It just sounds nice. I know you may feel exactly the opposite, but it's nice to be a little dishonest and say it over there like that. Okay. So expressing humility and gratitude is wiser than what you might really want to say. I mean, so just be a little civil and scientific, and don't let it degenerate into a slanging match between you and the reviewers. Very often your article is going to be rejected. What should you do? Do nothing. Do not send it back. Do not, by and large, don't appeal unless you feel a gross injustice has been done. Use the comments and suggestions to send an improved version of your manuscript to some other journal. Okay. It is generally not recommended to protest or this and that, unless you believe the comments were grossly unfair and incompetent. But by and large, most of the times it doesn't happen that way. So just make your changes and send it to another sort of paper. So I think I've said my bit about how, having been on both sides of the fence, what we can do, what we should do, what we should try not to do, and hope we get our articles published. But I think the way the Indian society or anesthesiology in India has to move forward is by research and publication. And the respect of Indian anesthesiologists all over the world will improve if we can get our work published. We are doing fantastic work. We just have to crystallize it so that we can get it published in a good journal with everyone respect. And this is the way forward for our society as far as our international standing and stature is concerned. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak, and I'm happy to take a few questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dwivedi. It was an excellent and a mesmerizing talk. I mean, you have dealt in detail every aspect of it. Probably, I don't think anything has been missed, and most of the people who have been hearing your talk must have got lots of knowledge and extra knowledge. At the same time, they know how to now go ahead with their own research work. But we have a couple of questions. Once again, let me take this opportunity to thank the national headquarters office viewers for giving it a chance or scope to moderate this session. We have a couple of questions, Dr. Dwivedi. One is getting accepted by paid journal more than unpaid journal. Is it probably that you can get it published by an unpaid journal more easily than by a paid journal, or a paid job other way as well? Which is easier?
Oh, that's again a good question. So there are some journals, they will, you pay them something and 90% chance of it getting accepted, that too within a week. And I know many people have this sort of deadline to meet. My promotion is due in 2 weeks. My interview is due in 1 month. Will the IJA publish? And I've had to say, sorry, boss, we'll go through the normal process, and it will take an average of so many days is what it takes. Then they don't send it to us. And I know a lot of people have these paid journals and they do it. Now, whether it counts or not, now it depending on why you're publishing. If you want NMC recognized journal, even DOAJ journals, many of them take money and they publish, it'll be accepted. But if you want from your academic curiosity, from your academic standing, it should go in a good professional society journal like the IJA or some other journals, like in other fields. So then those are a little harder to get into than a paid journal. Even some paid journals are good journals. So some very good journals take publication charges, and they are very good journals and they are difficult to get into. So it's not just a question of because I will pay, I will get published. There are many journals who do that. So If you are in a hurry to publish to get a promotion or something, you should know which those journals are. But otherwise, stick to good journals which are good standing in society, and you will get through.
But sir, it's always a thinking that probably, paid journal means I mean, when you pay something, probably it gets easily published, and then the rating of that journal to the committee whom you're presenting your research paper, probably it is not that well appreciated than an unpaid journal and or a society journal, as you were saying. Probably this is the thought process is already existing to the, to the selectors or any person who's responsible.
For example, there are many people who believe that research should be open access, right? And prominent institutions believe that. So they will pay the journal to make the journal, that article, open access. From British Medical Journal, you can publish either as a unpaid manner, in which case only subscribers will be able to see your article, or you pay and you make it open access and anyone will be able to see the article. Some journals, for example, in critical care, the journal Critical Care is a paid journal, but it's got a fantastic impact factor, right? So they are good journals, but they only take on payment. So there are different philosophies. And there are some journals who will publish anything if you pay them. And so journals have different reputations and different sort of things. In academic promotion, all it has to be NMC recognized. So anything which has got a DOAJ, this thing, they will accept it and you'll get your promotion. So
I know, because especially when in an academic setup, probably that sort of bad thought process is already existing. That probably if it's the paid journal, and more importantly, the selectors, they are not at all aware of those journals. So naturally, they take it. They first ask you the question whether it's a paid journal or an unpaid journal. That is something which is really it bothers the the researchers as well. So even if it is a good journal, which is a paid journal, but despite that at the background, that paid journal always is not accepted well. That is what is there probably. So as you said, is very likely. The other question, which is
Shall I add something here?
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Because of the last so many years experience, what I've thought, now in IJ is catering to the entire anesthesia fraternity of a country, where you are producing 3,200 of anesthesiologists every year. Now to publish, I think maximum you can publish how many articles if you multiply with 12, and with the supplements, if you add the supplements also 250 maximum, 250, and out of those original articles, they are not more than 120, 125, which are mandatory for your promotions or for job, whatever it is. The idea is to stimulate the research in the country. But when on the contrary, when the NMC has put up, a blanket order that you should have this number of publications, at that time the authors are forced to go to the other journals where they can get it very fast, very early. Whether it's a paid or unpaid hardly matters to them. They want a swift thing. It's not contributing to the research of the country. It is just contributing to your self-directed goals of getting promotion. This type of research, whatever is accumulating, it's not contributing to the advancement of their specialty. These type of rules, they have to be looked, not just anesthesiology. I'm talking about other specialties also. When you're putting a pressure, just like publish or perish, just like that pressure by the authorities, people will do all type of misconduct also. You will get a lot of them. So ultimately the thing is that if you want Dr. Devati is right here, if you want to go academic standing, if you want to have academic standing, the journal should be good. The rest of the policies by the journals are different. So what we should be striving at, NMC's recognized journal, they have just given a list, and recently that it was just what you call that indexing agencies was ousted from this rank. NMC mentioned the journals, and now only 4 or 5 agencies are there, but it is not helping us to progress in anesthesiology if a lot of pressure is put on the authors to publish. There should be some alternative to that also, just for the sake of academics. That's my take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the contrary, if you see, NMC also has made it mandatory for the junior residents to submit a research paper while they're presenting their MD exam.
It's
So
a
this is
pressure game.
something, so naturally you have very limited, you don't expect that all those journals which have been mentioned in NMC, that has to, you have to put a paper, publish a paper in those journals, not that possible. So that is again something which is very difficult for all the initiate budding researchers, I mean to say. So obviously you've got to think on that aspect as well. The other question which is very pertinent is, most of the journals, they say that you need to suggest a reviewer. So which is mandatory. So is it ethical for as an author to submit a reviewer, and do you think that reviewer should be known to that person, to the journal? But I think this is something which is, it does not mean that when you submit a reviewer's name, your paper is going to be submitted to the same reviewer. It is not like that. It is just you add to the journal, the editorial board, the journal committee, so that you know that who can be as a reviewer, where you can send some papers. So I think that is something. Would you like to add something, Dr. Dwivedi? By putting your name or submitting a reviewer's name, is it mandatory and ethical?
The journal asks you to suggest reviewers. So two things happen. One, it adds to the reviewer pool.
Yes.
You may not necessarily assign that reviewer to your article. You can assign it to some similar other article.
Exactly.
Even if he assigns one of them, he will also assign 2 or 3 other independent reviewers from his pool. There's no issue. There's no big deal or no big problem.
I think actually primarily it is being meant to add to the pool of the reviewers. That's primarily it is the intention of the journal, because you have a lot of names and probably your paper initially does not go to the same reviewer whom you suggested. So naturally,
Even say, are there some reviewers you do not want it to go to? I've got some reviewers you're opposing, like like you will say, I oppose my article going to Dr. Dwivedi for review. That also they have. They have both sort of, depending on some of the journal policies.
you need to, does it exist like that? You oppose, is it there?
I've been on 1 or 2 journals where those questions have been asked.
There's a question: how impact factor of any journal will be decided? How far is it reliable? Is there anyone would like to take this question? How impact factor of any journal will be decided, and how far is it reliable?
So the impact factor, the classical or the most accepted impact factor is the one which is given by Clarivate. Earlier it used to be called a Thomson's impact factor. And certain types of articles are included in the denominator, mainly your original articles and so on. And so it's the number of citations you get divided by the number of articles in that journal. So a lot of articles from that journal are cited, then your impact factor is very high. So of that journal. So a journal with a very high impact factor is something which you should always strive to go to, but it's also the most difficult to get in. Right? How reliable it is? It depends. It has its pluses and minuses. It's one of the metrics by which you assess the quality or good strength of a journal. There could be others, but there are some drawbacks. For example, I may be the 100th author in that article, which is a multiple thing, but the impact. So So it's one of the ways in which you look at. There are other ways of looking at the metrics of a journal, but impact factor is one of the, let's say, accepted or more common ways in which you're looking at the how the journal is functioning and what is the
Standard
journal is making over there. So the higher the impact factor, the better the journal.
Standard of the journal, of quality of papers which is published in that journal. Yeah. But so when you submit a paper, so is it on the impact factor you submit, or it's because primarily on the aims and scope of that journal, whether your article is appropriate for that journal to be published? So
To be aims and scope of the journal. You cannot submit a paper to a gynecology journal.
So naturally, primarily you decide on the aim and scope of that journal, not on the basis of your.
The journal, you can choose a journal depending on the impact factor, depending on how important you think your study is.
Yeah.
So
primarily, first thing is scope and aim, and then subsequently you can think of the impact factor, whether it is really a good standard journal or not. Yeah.
There are some journals which are general journal, like NEJM, Lancet. So if you think you've done something which will benefit a lot of people across specialities, and you've done a fantastic study, you can try that. But otherwise, it's within your specialty, with the aims and scope of your journal, of that journal, and then you go either up or down depending on the impact factor is one of the things. Sometimes
One more thing is, sir, regarding the CTRI, which is nowadays one of the most important criteria for submitting or doing a research and submitting a paper. So the CTRI, which is there are certain instances where the CTRI only tells you that yes, this has been registered. But whether you've done your job before that and submitted a paper, does it clarify? Supposing you've just gotten a registration number that is there, but you've done your job before that registration, obtaining the registration number, and then you, at the time of submission, you just submit that number. So how do you get away of that from that? How can you say that?
CTRI is a public registry. It's a publicly accessible registry of clinical trials.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is so that everyone anywhere in the world can know what has been done on that topic and what studies are going on in that topic, even though they're not completed, or which at least have been registered. So they are likely to start, have already been started, and what is going on. And that is sort of to harmonize research across the board. Now, the study, you cannot start the study until you've got a CTRI register. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say you, a good reviewer and even editors, what they will do is if you put a CTRI number, they will go to CTRI and they'll look at that study. And especially in international journals, they will see when you started the study. So if you've written, for example, that the study was done between 2021 and 23, your CTRI registration is showing 22, then your article is out. Okay, because you've started the study before CTRI registration. That is one. Secondly, they'll see what methods you've put in your CTRI. What is the population you've studied? If there's a discrepancy between what you've written in your methods in your manuscript and what is available on CTRI or clinical trials or GOV, again, in a good journal, you'll be in trouble. There'll be an instant rejection because you cannot say in your registries, put up something and do something different when you actually do the study. So there has to be concordance between what you put up on your trial registry and what you do in your study and what you publish in your what you put up in your manuscript. So a good reviewer will always go through CTRI and see what you've written there and what you've written in your manuscript, and they should match. There should not be any discrepancy over there.
Sir, shall I add something more here to that?
Yes, sure.
Sir, last 3 years, what we have seen, the authors, they are doing this type of misconduct. Few authors, not everyone, putting the CTRI number later on. Already did the research, then putting a CTRI, then submitting the journal. What happens? Now, since our IJ is a double blind peer-reviewed journal, we don't expose the CTRI on the first peer review. It has to be submitted to the first page file where the identity and the privacy of the author is maintained so that the reviewer should give a very good review about the first blind review. Now, during the phase of acceptance, suppose that the article is very good, at that time, we encourage the authors to write the CTRI number on the main title article file so that even the reviewers can go through that. By going through that, we see many discrepancies in that. So many things, the methodology sections are different, and it's the duty of us editors to check that CTRI mentioned studies. We have to go in detail because we have to accept and publish almost 7 to 8 original articles. It's the duty of every editor who is handling that manuscript to go to the CTRI and compare those articles and compare the methodology and everything so that if that article gets published, the journal should not get a bad name because it becomes very difficult to retract the article later on. So this is just going on, but editors editor's job is very difficult from here. So looking at the CTRI also, then looking at the reviewers comment also, then comparing the CTRI methodology, it's a really tough job. But we keep it only for the accepted articles. At least let's check properly there.
So
Yeah,
Dr. Garg, if I may suggest, if you're not putting the CTRI number initially to maintain blinding of the peer review, the person who's doing the technical, the assistant editor who's doing the technical review initially should check that in the CTRI.
That can be done.
Before it goes to an associate editor who will send it out to reviewers.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I was exactly, Dr. Bajwa was hinting at that only, that most of the people, what they're doing is probably they're getting the CTI registered later. They're doing, they've done their job, and at the time of submission, they are giving the CTI. So naturally, that is something which is, I found quite a number of, original articles which was there. So, but anyway, that has to be rectified. I find it very important, because, and there's a question also in this chat box. There's a question, sir. Anyone who can take it. Ghost authorship and gift authorship. What do you mean by this? A few word on this. What do you mean by ghost authorship and a gift authorship? Someone is asking. Neeraj has asked this question, I suppose.
I don't know what you mean by ghost, but gift authorship is, like, tu mera dost hai.
मैं नाम डाल देता हूँ.
उसको खुश रखने का उसका भी नाम डाल देता, even though he has not read your paper, he has not read your paper, he has not done anything. You put someone's name, you put your wife's name, who's a gynecologist or an anesthesia paper, so that uska bhi thoda publication बढ़ जाएगा, uska, she will get a promotion. So that's all gift authorship, and it is absolutely wrong. It is not the right thing to do, but it does happen. And the journals always tell you that you must list the contributions of every author, what they have done, whether they have contributed to design, whether they have contributed to data collection, whether they have contributed to interpretation, writing the manuscript. Unfortunately, what our people do is we just keep ticking the boxes and, they have done this. So there is, at the end of the day, it is our own conscience which has to guide us. But sometimes other realities of life make you do something different, which is not correct. But there are some heads of department who insist that their name goes on every paper, even though they don't even know what is there. But so that's a gift authorship. And it should not happen. So it's very clear that if you look at the ICJME criteria for authorship, just because someone has approved a study, because someone has funded a study or given some money, doesn't mean their name has to come on the paper, but it happens and it should not happen.
So one very important pertinent question, which you really first initially pointed out, before going for research work, you should always meet a statistician, and you should take their inputs regarding your questionnaire and how to go ahead with the study. So at the time of publication, do you think that we need to mention their name as an author, as a part of the author?
So again, it depends. If a routine statistical analysis that you're doing, I don't think so. But if some statisticians contribute quite a lot to the study design, if it's very complex, it's like, if it's not a simple randomized trial, there's a cluster randomized trial, or there's some lot of adjustments you have to make because your groups are unbalanced and some lot of statistical analysis had to be done, or you made a pre-made plan, you want to do some different type of statistical analysis, or like a Bayesian analysis or something, then by all means you should go, because there is a definite contribution by the statistician to the, some intellectual contribution by the statistician to the paper. But for routine stuff, maybe not, but again, it depends on your institutional policy and your equations with everyone. You may or may not put their name on it too.
So one more thing is regarding the CTRI, if it is a retrospective study, how do you do a CTRI there? Do you need it?
So retrospective studies need not be registered with CTRI, but if you have a doubt, register, right? If you have a doubt whether to register or not, just go ahead and register. If it's a purely retrospective study, it may be taken up without registration. But otherwise, you register like any other study, you register if you have a doubt.
I think it would be a good idea if we even go for the CTRI website, and it's a specific frequently asked question. They say that yes, all studies where human beings are involved, their data is involved, it's always better to register them. So I think, as Dr. Diveti has mentioned, we should get our studies registered when we plan for any retrospective, wherever the patient data is being disclosed in any way. It will be good.
But in that case, your data has been retrospectively taken, and then you're putting it forward. So the CTRI will be, will be after your data has been already registered. I mean, already taken up.
So here, since you are taking ethical committee approval, you will be having a protocol. So when it goes for ethical committee approval, simultaneously you do a CTRI, and they measure if the data collection is.
Please mute yourself, Manisha. Yeah.
I'm muted.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, it always you will be disclosing it. The data collection is retrospective. You are not doing any intervention as such. So that will be depicted on the CTRI platform in the public registry. So it would be always good, and many authors are there. So we would strongly suggest that any patients involving the human data in any way, they preferably should be registered on one of the platforms.
Yeah, so and a lot of people take the view that getting data, human data or data of patients is also an intervention. So
Yeah.
even ethics committees take that stand sometimes. So just do it.
Dr. Mohit, data is retrospective, but we are putting a prospective analysis to that. So
Yeah.
at least to come to some conclusions, that itself becomes a mandatory for the registration. And moreover, since IJ is striving for the Medline indexing, I think all the agencies, they want, it's one of the, mandatory formality that the registered studies, they are given more preference, they are given more weightage when they take the subjective matter on the data indexing as well as the journal indexing. So it's very important for IJ to go for the CTRI, whether it's a retrospective, observational, clinical investigation, whatever. It's always better.
I think this makes more clear because when we take an ethical clearance from the institutional ethical clearance, probably that itself tells that this is the beginning of your study.
Yeah.
So naturally, this is the beginning of your study. You registered then, and then you take a retrospective analysis. So naturally, that is the starting point of your study. But you have taken the data retrospectively. That is more important. That you take an ethical clearance when you do it. I think Rakesh, I think this is something which is very appropriate. There's a question, sir. Someone has asked you, requested you to give a sort of, the point-wise guideline that how do you, when you submit, what are the checklists you need to do it. So can you go ahead with it? I think sir has already mentioned the checklist. What are the things you need to go ahead and if you have heard it from the very beginning, probably everything has been already mentioned. He has very clearly documented what are the things you need to get prepared ready before you submit your article, and then time and again you try to recheck yourself that what are things we are missing. So I think it's already clear. He's already covered that topic, that aspect. There's a question: is IG using any software to detect articles drafted by ChatGPT?
I think Dr. Garg or Dr. Bajwa are best.
Garg, Dr. Baju, I think, would be much more appropriate to answer this.
No. Actually, the ChatGPT has come into existence over the last 6 months to 1 year.
Exactly, it's very recent. So naturally,
I have already left the journal from the last 6 months, and we didn't try to at least. Actually, we run the plagiarism software first of all, but the ChatGPT is very difficult to detect with the current available, the software. It's very difficult to detect the articles being drafted by the ChatGPT. But ideally, we encourage more of a creative writing, the more of a writing, the methodological writing, the scientific writing. The ChatGPT is a very general type of app where you can go about drafting an article, but it's very difficult to isolate the articles drafted by that. It's very difficult for at least editor with the current software we have for IJA. That's very difficult. Dr. Rakesh will have a tough challenge in his hands.
Rakesh, would like to add something?
Just to add something, this is being discussed in various editors platforms. If anybody uses ChatGPT, the responsibility is of authors. It has been clarified that ChatGPT cannot be one of the authors. This is clear. Whatever they interpret, it has to be the responsibility of the author. So they have to take responsibility and they have to disclose it that they have used ChatGPT. This is one. Second is, as Dr. Bajwa has rightly mentioned, and we'll be coming in future webinars into this REAP also. There are many things when you write the discussion, which Dr. Diveti also mentioned, we need to clinically interpret it. For example, there are many things statistically significant, and it will say that this is a significant technique A is better than technique B from the statistical point of view, but it may not be clinically significant. ChatGPT probably in future may be updated, but these things are not there. It has to be a human touch. It has to be a critical appraisal, and it has to be critically analyze your data in the clinical context. So probably as of now, ChatGPT is not a good option. It may not be come up, though the robust guidelines from the publishers and the indexing agency is on the verge, and ISA will be soon releasing its status policy for the use of ChatGPT for its publications.
There's a question, I think this is very simple. Review articles are possibly most frequently cited. Does this make it scientifically superior contribution?
So It depends on how the review is done. Now,
What type of review it is?
is the
A
system
narrative review or systematic review?
so you can have a narrative review or you can have a systematic review. A narrative review counts a little low on the scientific value, but a properly done systematic review, perhaps with an added meta-analysis, will count high. Now, a systematic review is systematic because it clearly lays down criteria on basis of which you include or do not include articles in your review, right? So other than narrative review, I will only choose the articles I like and I will check out the articles I don't like and not discuss them. But in a systematic review, you have to give your search terms, you have to, and anyone who puts the search terms should be able to get the same articles back as were listed in that narrative review. And then you do a meta-analysis counting. Secondly, a systematic review, like you register your trials on CTRI, a systematic review and a meta-analysis should be registered on what they call as Prisma.
Yes.
Yeah, so you have to register it. So, and once you register it, again, you can compare what you've done in your paper with what was you've actually registered. So a good systematic review, which is registered with Prisma, which is has got defined criteria to include and exclude articles, you summarizes all of them in a sort of known way, estimates the risk of bias in each article. Okay, there are different scales on which they risk of bias, so that people know whether the trial which is included is a good trial, reliable, not reliable. And at the end of the day, can even do a mathematical meta-analysis, which will tell you a overall estimate, okay, with the variability. So all those things will make a review, a systematic review, valuable. As opposed
Yeah, exactly. So if you see
narrative
the
reviews are useless, but if you look at scientific validity, the systematic review rates higher than a narrative review.
But I think, sir, RCT is much more better than a narrative review. If you take it according to the level, the systematic review with meta-analysis is number one. Then we come with the, RCT, because that's an original research. I mean, randomized control trial, that is much more important than to go with narrative review. And if you take it according to the level of your study.
So reviews in terms of scientific validity, we are generally looking at systematic reviews. Narrative are useful. They're useful for knowledge and to something, but on scientific scale, it has to be a systematic review.
Yeah. So there's scientific registering a study contributes to share. Is the letter to editor versus case report versus research article? So what do you think? Obviously, research article is much more better than a case report and then letter to. I think this is something which is understandable. Everyone can understand.
We should not look down on anything. Yes, the hierarchy, one is better, higher than. Don't look down on anything. For many postgraduates, for many of us, the first exposure to writing
case report.
Case report. Right? So, you get into the habit of writing, you get in the collecting data, collecting information, doing a literature search, writing a paper nicely, documenting everything nicely. So it gives you some exposure to the process of research and publication. So I think it's a useful exercise. Of course, a single case report does not have great value, but a case series may have better value, and so all those things, nothing is useless. But of course, if you want to start ranking things, then they'll come lower down in ranking.
There's an important question, sir. I think interesting question as well. Can your title for submission be different from ethics committee title? Actually, this is very important in patients, in candidates, because they submit a thesis where they take permission from the ethics committee. So the thesis topic title is quite different from the title which they submit a paper. So does it mean that you can have a different topic? The ethical committee permission which you've taken was on a thesis topic basis. Now, out of that thesis, you take up a topic and to submit a paper. Does it mean that it has to be the same topic, or it can be a different topic as well?
So, I don't know. But I do know that some people insist on everything being the same. Recently, we are doing planning a multi-center study, and one of the ethics committee approved a different title than what we had submitted to CTRI. So CTRI said, no, the title must be exactly the same. So I don't do that sort of thing.
And this is very relevant in patients.
Dr. Mohit, I faced this problem many times.
Yeah, very relevant for postgraduates.
What happened actually, when you submit to the ethics committee, many times it is done in haste without going into the thinking that it will be published later on. It has to be submitted to the journal also later on. Whatever they include in that title, they just sometimes make it very subjective without even including all the research questions, all the parameters into that questions. Now, when you are going to publish that article, you have to submit to journal. Your article should be visible to all the audience across the world. Sometimes the title which you have kept in your ethical committee and the title which you are submitting journal, you can make it different, but the entire methodology should not be different. The title is very, sometimes it appears like a mirror of the face. No, it's like mirror of your article. So there is no harm in doing that, provided the methodology and other parts, every data should remain the same.
Yeah, I agree. So, and very often your title may change after you get your results. So when you submit to ethics, you will say, I'm doing a study comparing dexamethasone versus methylprednisolone in patients with COVID pneumonia. Okay, I don't know the results. When I do the study, I find that dexamethasone is far superior to methylprednisolone. So when I submit my paper for publication, I'll say dexamethasone is superior to methylprednisolone in management of severe COVID pneumonia, a randomized control study. So I've changed my title because I've incorporated my results into my title. I don't think that should be a problem. The problem is when the babus come in, like I said, the bureaucracy of research. CTR will say, tomorrow ethics committee is for this title, you cannot have a different.
Yeah, this is the problem. That's the problem. I think this should be understood by the reviewer.
Bureaucracy will handle it. But at the end, when you publish your paper, you can change the title if you're doing it. But you can't say, like Dr. Bajwa saying, the method. So if you planned and CTRI and ethics is for a randomized control trial, you can't publish and say COVID methylprednisolone versus dexamethasone observational prospective study. That you cannot.
So the methodology should be the same. The topic can be different. So this is very different.
It's my personal view. And,
so that is. So I think CTR is for everyone, whether it's an observational study or a randomized control trial. CTR has to be for everyone. That's a question that whether it's an observational study, we need to have a CTR again. It's been clear that it is for every study. Whatever study you do, you have to go for a CTR. There's a question: if you have done an original study when CTR done and later want to write other paper with data collected during prospective study, how do we write CTR number later? Since they have done I think this question we already addressed.
Oh, so let me get it right. If I understand the question, you've done a study which was CTRI registered.
Yes.
You published that study.
Yeah.
Then you've taken some sub-study out of that main data.
Yes.
And publishing as a separate paper. Now, there are 2 or 3 views on this. One is, sometimes you split that main study into 3 or 4 studies called salami publication, which is not encouraged. But let's say you've done it. Let's say you got one very big database and you've given a general sort of data once, and then you're taking on 1 or 2 specific aspects and writing on that. Then you refer to that previous study. So you say that this is based on data from that study, which was CTRI registered with that number. That you can do. Then it is up to the editor.
But the methodology should be the same, sir.
It is up to the editor and the reviewer to decide whether this constitutes a salami publication, whether it should have been done in the main paper itself, or whether it's important enough to form a separate paper, in which case they'll allow you to go ahead. But you need to refer to that.
But the methodology should be the same. And what I mean to say is that there shouldn't be any difference in that methods. So that is important.
Yeah, I mean, the methods have to be the same. The study has already been done and published, so the methods can't change. So if you write some, so if it's a sub-study, then the methods will remain the same. It's just using a different set of data from that study.
Dr. Mohi, sorry for interrupting. I think it's really a good moment that so much of discussion is happening. I can assure you that this research and publication is a series of sessions. We may not be overburdening Dr. Divetia to cover all the future webinars questions. I'm sure he will be there with us, and I'm sure all the participants who are asking so many questions will be having focused webinars. I'm thankful to you that you have given us so many topics to us, and we'll try to cover all your queries in a very focused section, like how to do registration, where to do registration. So we'll keep one session for you. Systematic review will keep second session, how to choose the authorship criteria. I think those will be good topics for this. And just to maintain the sanctity of time, may I request Professor Mohit to just wind up?
Dr. Rakesh,
Yes.
you invite everyone to send their queries to your email so that whatever the things relevant will be covered in the next webinar also.
Right,
Dr.
so-
Baju, I think we've covered most of the queries. There's hardly any talk because one are queries which are repetition queries. Probably they must have
Should be
joined.
kept for the next speaker also.
Yeah. I
So in
think
case if anybody has any queries, they can WhatsApp me or write to me email. I will compile it up and I'll put it to the authors, and maybe we'll put it some relevant for this session also into the groups. So we'll come forward for all your solutions. Don't worry. So we have sufficient time, and ISA has already taken this initiative. So we're coming with all your queries so that you have good publications and India shines for its publication across the world. Dr. Mohit.
thank you once again to all my seniors, my delegates, and my faculty for giving me a chance to moderate this session. I think it has been a wonderful session, a brainstorming session, an excellent, mesmerizing talk by Dr. Divetia. I think a lot of things we have learned. Personally, I have learned so many things which are really something which one should not miss. And people probably who have joined during this session must have learned a lot of things, which was very detailed and distinct and very clear. So I think hardly there's anything we missed it. Once again, to brief it out, that we really need to make a question, answer the question in point of the question, and then we need to have an hypothesis. We need to have a very good involvement of a statistician while writing a paper. Registration of the CTR is mandatory for whatever publications you would like to go ahead with. Approval from the ethical committee is very important, and that's mandatory again. Decide before you write and upload your journal, upload your paper, always think on the scope and the aim of the journal, whether it really fits your paper in that journal. This is one of the most important factor, because outrightly that the people can reject because this does not fit within it, and whether that paper has already been published. Those type of papers have already been published in those journals. So that also is very important when you decide on a journal. So aim and scope is very important while you decide on a journal. Go through it, take some time. And while writing a manuscript, obviously, as Dr. Divetia has very rightly said, introduction should have at least what you're going to do, why you're going to do, and your aim objective should always be there. Obviously, material methods, review of literature, results should be very distinct, and it should be very clearly described, discussed with supporting references. And then conclusion should be whatever your endpoint was and whether what you found it. Nothing extra should be given in that. And always remember, when you try to upload, always try to give a title, an abstract, and a keyword. They are very important. The keyword is something which is this is a chain: the abstract, the topic, and the keyword. They are three most important components when you upload your topic, because anyone who's going to find out your article, they will always put a keyword, and then the keyword will always give your topic, and then it will automatically give you an abstract. The abstract is something which is being most often being read. So these three things are very important. And there's obviously Dr. Divetia has very approved. We have answered most of your questions. Any questions you would have, as of now, you can send a mail to Dr. Rakesh. I think he will be very happy enough to answer your questions. We will have further such sessions every alternate Thursday, same timing, same day, alternate days with a fresh new topic. Thank you so much once again, all the audiences, all the speakers, and my senior office bearers, and the president, the honor secretary, the past president, president-elect, treasurer, and so on and so forth, GC. And once again, back to you, Dr. Rakesh. Over to you, please. Dr. Rakesh, over to you.
So thank you so much, sir. So I will request Dr. Manoj to take the further proceedings. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ISA and IJA, giving me a chance for vote of thanks. My sincere thanks to our visionary president of ISA National, Dr. Bimeshwar sir, for his tremendous support, guidance, and blessing for making this ISA-IJA Research and Publication Academic Webinar a grand success. I express my deep sense of indebtedness and sincere gratitude to Vice President ISA National, Dr. Mahesh Kumar Sinha sir, for his support and blessing. I am very thankful to ISA National President-elect, come today Speaker of ISA-IJA Research and Publication Academic Webinar, for his excellent presentation and the topic how the submit a perfect manuscript to a journal. Thank you very much again, sir. My special thanks to our ISA National Dynamic Honorary Secretary, Dr. Sukhvinder Singh Bajwa, for his tremendous contribution and to take the responsibility to a new height of our ISA and IJA. I am very thankful to the Chairman ISA Academic Committee, Dr. Venkat Giri KM sir, to take academic activity of ISA in a new height. I wholehearted thanks and congratulate to our Editor-in-Chief, Dr. Rakesh Garg sir, for hard work, day-night hard work, and started this academic webinar in a short time. I am thankful to Dr. Naveen Malhotra, immediate past Secretary ISA National, Dr. Virender Sharma, immediate past Treasurer of ISA National, and the GC member, all the GC member of ISA National, for your support and blessings. My special thanks to Syed Mohit Ahmad sir from Aligarh for his great effort towards this academic webinar. My sincere thanks to all the editors, reviewers, authors, researchers, and clinicians. And I'm very thankful to past President ISA National, all the present and past office bearer of a state and city branch and national ISA, and all the member of ISA National. Thank you. Long live ISA. Over to Rakesh sir.
Thank you so much. We have many dignitaries and luminaries, so this is otherwise academic section is over. So they can put their feedback and views, any suggestions, so that we can take it forward. We have Dr. Naveen with us. Sir.
Rakesh, it will be available in the YouTube?
Yes, sir. Dr. Bajwa has already recorded, so he will be sharing the link.
Dr. Naveen, you unmute yourself.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone.
Oh.
Good evening, all, and greetings from Penoti, but yes, it was wonderful listening to the deliberations from Dr. Syed Mohit Ahmed. Me and my whole team, we were on mic and listening the whole talk. And to be honest, on a serious note, Dr. Divitya, I personally and my team enjoyed listening to your talk and the discussion subsequent put forth. Heartiest congratulations to Team ISA and Team IJA, Dr. Rakesh and Dr. Bajwa, and ably supported by the entire Governing Council for starting this good initiative of ISA IJA reprogram. And I'm very sure it will be very good and helpful for the young budding aspirants who wish to publish their quality work in IJA, and also to the seasoned and experienced authors and reviewers to sharpen their skills. Thank you very much. Good luck. Long live ISA.
Bajwa, you were saying something. You were just commenting.
Giri sir, actually all our classes, all these webinars, they will be available on the YouTube of ISA NHQ. We can, anybody can see anytime. So it's not that we are just doing it live here. They are available every time.
No? That's why I asked whether where it is available, whether in the IJA or where people to easily.
Everything available, all the academic activities will be available.
But this was a very informative discussion and the topic as well. So this is very precious for the new budding institute, the researchers probably. This topic.
Yeah. We have a few editors with us also. Dr. Sapna is with us. Dr. Nishant, you want to add something?
Nishant was there. I saw him. Dr. Nishant?
Rakesh,
Yes, sir.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
All this research and all, to do this research, you have to get the CIT approval and all first only now?
Yes, sir. It has to be done prior to you recruit first study. So all ethical approvals